Oh, hello everybody. How are you today? Great to be with you. This is our September 2019 monthly training seminar. And I have information to share with you today that I think will be really useful for you. I hope you'll listen and put it to use. It's simple information, but very helpful. And just want to go over a few things before I get into our main topic. We do have website ordering. It's a growing part of our business. We don't want to eliminate people from calling in orders. You're always welcome to call in your orders and talk to us, ask questions. We love to talk to our customers. However, sometimes our hours may not be convenient for you. You can go online and place orders 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can do it on Christmas Eve if you want to. There's no limit to when you can place orders. There are limits to when we're working, however. So you can make your ordering fit your schedule if you'd like to. And then a lot of people will call in sometimes and they'll do it online sometimes. You don't have to do one or the other necessarily. So you can do however you want on that. This month, our monthly special is Colon Active. That is our new prebiotic/probiotic product. It's a symbiotic is what that means. A symbiotic has both the live bacteria and something to feed them with. So this contains 7 live bacteria that will actually colonize in your body. A lot of the probiotics that people are selling now, they're good probiotics in a lot of ways, but they don't colonize. They're not a normal part of the intestinal microflora. They can serve very good, useful purposes, sometimes helping to get rid of some bad things or whatever, but they don't become a part of your intestinal flora and keep giving you benefits day after day, year after year, sort of in perpetuity. The Colon Active does, and it's not an extremely strong formula. You can get too much of the probiotic actually, and we didn't want to do that, but we do want to have enough that it will really give you benefit. I take one in the morning, one in the evening, and I feel like I really am getting benefit from it, and I think you will too. So that's our monthly special this month, and we'd love for you to try it. Now next month we're going to have another seminar like this. I'm thinking it will probably be about CBD oil. That's a kind of a hot topic, a lot of information out there on it. Some of it's good, some of it's not good. But it's something that the 2 major things you see people using it for, and I'll probably won't ever say this on here again, because if we had the product, it would be illegal for me to say it, because we'd be making health claims that we couldn't. Right now we don't have that product, but people are using it for epilepsy, neurological problems, and they're using it for pain. And I know of 2 people that I've had try it, one with rheumatoid pain, the other with kind of a neuropathic pain, and it helped both of them. So those are just anecdotal observations, but it really did seem to help, and there seems to be a growing body of evidence supporting CBD for these uses. And so that's something we'll talk about probably next month, about how it works in the body, how it might be legal in your state and not in somebody else's state or country. It's getting pretty much legal almost everywhere in the United States and Canada now. There's a few little places that are problematic, but generally it's pretty much legal. A lot of countries it's not, and I think that will probably change in the future too. It's becoming more and more accepted, and there's a reason why it should be accepted. The THC, which is the mind-altering drug in hemp, but especially in marijuana, is very, very low, to such a degree that it really can't have any effect on you. No psychoactive effects at all. It's just very small trace amounts of it, and that's regulated by law to be below 0.3%. And you were looking at marijuana, that the extracts they're preparing from that can have up to 15 or 20% of THC. Very strong. So, it's a different ball game. It's just these particular oils that are not found very many places in nature, but seem to have some real benefit for health, is what you're really getting in that. There again, a slide on our new colon active product, the symbiotic, as I mentioned. And again, that's our special this month. Be sure and call in and ask about this, something that you really want to try. It's great for digestive health, and it's a very good one for metabolic health. There's a lot of research on some of these bacteria showing that it helps you metabolize fats and sugars more effectively. Some people, some of the research suggests it might be beneficial for weight loss. I don't know on that particular thing, but it's really a neat product, and it's something you want to look at, especially if you're having digestive health issues or if you're having any kind of metabolic health issues. This is something you want to try. Our topic today is one that we've had before. It's water. Now, this is, I'm calling the Master Nutrient 2. We talked about water about a year and a half ago, and it's an important topic. Now, I was just at the American Chemical Society meeting in San Diego, California, and I was really interested because their theme for that meeting was the chemistry of water. In the very first session I went to, kind of an opening session, they had people talking about how water works in chemical reactions, talking about clean water issues, talking about, getting water supply to third world countries, a lot of different topics like that. Then they had kind of an open forum session at the end. One of the people in that session came up and talked about how they were having problems. It was from a aid group, a medical aid group in Africa, and they were having problems getting the drugs to work. They would give them the drugs, and they just didn't work right like they would expect back home in the United States or in whatever European country they might have been from. They just weren't effective. And they were concerned because they thought maybe something was causing the drugs to be degraded. Maybe during shipping they were getting too hot in shipping or something and breaking down. Maybe, there was some genetic difference in the people that they didn't react to the drugs the same way. They found out none of that was the case. What was the case is if they gave them a bottle of water to drink when they took the medicines, they worked just normally like they would with anybody else. The people were dehydrated and the drugs weren't working. Now that was really fascinating to me, that they were able to observe that. But that would work not just for drugs, it would work for supplements too. They work in the same thing. Water is what transports drugs, nutrients, everything through the body, into cells, back out of the cells, the waste products. So water is just essential for any of these things, drugs or nutrients, to work correctly. And that, I was fascinated with that observation. So we're talking about water today. Now, you've probably, if you watch my videos, have seen this little booklet before, Nature's 7 Doctors. I've always loved that little book, simple little book. And it's hard to find now, but it's if you look on eBay, you could probably find it. But Nature's 7 Doctors, fresh air, good nutrition, pure water, our topic today, sunshine, exercise, rest, and the power of the mind. Or you could say power of faith in God. Prayer, meditation, relaxation techniques all enter into that same category. So, but water is one of those essential nature's doctors. And whenever I have somebody that they're asking for advice on how to be more healthy, and they don't feel like they're quite up to par, one of the first things I like to do is just go down this checklist. Are you doing these things? Any one of those things that you're not doing right is going to cause you not to be as healthy as you could be. They're all essential, and it just takes one broken chain link in that chain to really mess up your health. Our topic today is pure water. I think it's one of the most important, if not the most important one of those. I don't think your supplements will work right, just like those drugs didn't work right, if you're not getting enough water. I'll just say that. You're not going to get the benefit from our supplements if you don't get the water you need. You're not going to get the benefit from the food you eat either, and perhaps from the medicines you take, if you're taking them. Now, where there is water, usually there is life. You can see out here, one of the most inhospitable places on earth is a beach at the ocean. It's nothing there to drink. It's kind of like the ancient mariner said, water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink, if you remember that. However, there is lots of life there because some organisms have adapted to learn how to live in salt water, but we haven't, so we can't drink that water. Now, according to Genesis, when God created earth, he selected a planet with water. In the beginning, this is from Genesis 1 and 2 of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. See, the waters were there. He chose a place that had water because that's what he needed if he was going to create life in that place. Now, it turns out where there is no water, there is no life, at least as we know it. There may be forms of life that's out there somewhere we don't know anything about. In fact, there probably is. But the kind of life that we know about, at least, doesn't exist without water. And so when people, astronomers and modern scientists, are looking for planets that might be habitable, could have life on it, they're looking for water out there. And I just saw today that they think they found one. It's not in our galaxy, it's a long ways away, but they found from the radio telescope signatures that suggest that there's water in the atmosphere around that planet. And it's about the right distance from its sun to have temperatures about in the same range as ours. So they're thinking, well, that is potentially a place that has life like ours. Don't know. There's no way of proving it. They've just recently been able to even identify these planets because you can't see them with a light telescope. You can only see out there everything you see except the planets in our solar system are suns, or lots of suns as a galaxy. And radio telescopes are expanding where they can go and what they can see by a large degree. And when I say see, that's sort of loosely, you don't really see it, you see data from it. But not a visible spectrum that's coming from it. There is life without sunlight. Even sunlight is sort of expendable because blind cavefish have adapted to living in total darkness. No light at all. Although some nutrients come from outside, it's carried by streams of water. So they have to have water, but they don't have to have sunlight. How about oxygen? Well, these gut bacteria you have, a lot of them live in your gut in an environment with no oxygen. They don't have oxygen there. They're what you call anaerobic bacteria and cannot even survive in the presence of oxygen, some of them. Yet to be active and multiply, they do need water, Without water, they will eventually die. But how does water work? Well, water's the universal solvent. Water is able to dissolve to a small degree almost everything, but to a more larger degree very many things. And you can see that it pulls apart the sodium chloride there and allows them to engage in chemical reactions with other things. Without water, it's a solid crystal, just like the salt in your salt shaker, and it won't react with anything very easily. But when you put it in water, it suddenly becomes an active molecule, and then active atoms. Chemical reactions in water, again, the process of photosynthesis always occurs in a cell that's in an aqueous environment. Water is essential for digestion. Food has to go to an acidic medium where it's broken down and then is solubilized in water, and acid, which becomes more neutral as it goes through the intestinal system. The bile acids form micelles in the water. All these things water is essential for, whether it's even the fat-soluble vitamins, you have to have water there to absorb them, but especially the water-soluble vitamins. But for fat, micelles are a critical step in digestion. And you see the micelle has the fats on the inside, and then the outside part is hydrophilic, water-loving. So the micelle will float around in the water and carry the fat globules to the receptors where they're absorbed. And then there you have your vitamins A, D, E, and K. So they still need water, even if they're fat-soluble. Water is obviously important for digestion, but it's also good for your kidneys, not just your digestive tract. In a study with 192 Florida agricultural workers, they found that 53% of them were dehydrated when they came to work. At the end of the day, almost 81% could be demonstrated to be dehydrated. At least once a week, 31% of them tested positive for acute kidney damage because of dehydration. And of course, they were in an environment that was quite hot. Florida agricultural workers, you're talking about very hot temperatures and high humidity. But the humidity causes you not to be able to cool your body, so you keep losing water and it doesn't go anywhere. It just doesn't cool you. But, you know, they easily become dehydrated if they don't work to drink the water. And they have to make a real effort in that case. So the question that a lot of people have had is, does temperature of drinking water actually matter? Because, you know, the water can, you know, you're not going to be able to drink ice water out there in the field probably, unless your employer makes an effort to bring it to you. But one study I found that investigated whether someone should avoid cold water in a hot climate. They concluded in that study that there was no advantage to drinking lukewarm water. There might actually be some advantage of lowering body temperature when drinking cold water. That was their conclusion. Most importantly, though, it was better to drink whatever was palatable so that you would drink it. That was the critical thing in their study. And you can look up that study. It's written down there on the bottom. You can search on PubMed, and there's several studies in here. And if you go to PubMed, PUBMED.gov, you can put in the search terms. In this case, I would probably put in Brearley and water, and it'll probably come up on that search engine. But you can look these studies up and learn more about them if you want to. The brain also needs water. George Bernard Shaw, the great Irish writer and philosopher, said, "No diet will remove all fat from your body, because the brain is entirely fat. Without a brain, You might look good, but all you could do is run for public office. Okay, that's kind of funny. Maybe some truth to that, but nevertheless, your brain is a very high percentage of water, just like your whole body is. In fact, your body, for most of us, is somewhere around 60-65% water. You would think if you punched a hole and you'd be drained all out, but it doesn't work quite like that. Your blood does drain out, but that's only about 5% of your total water. Most of the water is inside little cells in your body, so it doesn't drain out that easily. But the brain has more water than the rest of the body, per kilogram, but fat comes in second. It has a lot of water and a lot of fat. The dry weight of the brain is about 60% fat, but that's the dry weight, not including the water. However, the brain is highly metabolically active, and all these metabolic reactions need to occur in an aqueous environment, and dehydration really affects the brain. Two studies that I'll just mention very briefly about that. A mouse study found that mice lost about 10% of the hydration of their brains with age. Synaptic responses were slower in the older mice with the older brains, but when rehydrated to a young mouse hydration, synaptic responses were restored. So their brains became normal if they forced them to have enough water. A lot of the synaptic responses that are slowed down were due to simply dehydration. And so that's something to really consider. You feel like your brain is slowing down with age a little bit, maybe it's not getting enough water. Human study found early neurological deterioration, they call it stroke in evolution, SIE, that can occur after an acute stroke. The hydration part, that 445 patients were tested for dehydration by measuring urine and rehydrated if indicated. SIE, that stroke in evolution, was lower by half in the rehydrated group. So this really had a profound effect on post-stroke recovery, really, is what that comes down to. Very profound effect. There again, the references are there. You can look those up if you're interested in learning more. Actually, dehydration can lead to stroke in the first place. This top study there was a study on whole blood viscosity in firefighters, because firefighters have above normal incidences of heart attack and stroke, especially when they're fighting a fire, because they believe it's because they become severely dehydrated and stressed. And so they were looking at the effect of hydration on whole blood viscosity in the firefighters. They did a simulated fire where they burn the building and they put out the fire and do a normal firefighting thing, and they set it up in a controlled way where they could measure hydration and blood viscosity. And I'll just read the results here. During the mock fire drill, it resulted in elevated whole blood viscosity. In other words, the blood was thicker. It didn't flow as easily at both low and high shear rates. Hematocrit and hemoglobin increased due to dehydration and hemoconcentration. Hemoglobin and hematocrit were restored to baseline values after exercise and rehydration. And while whole blood viscosity improved, baseline values were not restored. After exercise but before rehydration, whole blood viscosity changes were significantly larger than hematocrit and hemoglobin changes, suggesting the profound influence of hydration, suggesting the profound influence of hydration states on whole blood viscosity. So here we are seeing that they found that the blood flow would not be normal because of a thickening of the blood, essentially, if these people were dehydrated. And that in itself may lead to ischemic stroke. Also in this second study, and I'll just mention this one very briefly, they again acknowledge and state that the stroke, ischemic stroke, is a risk factor in people who are dehydrated. They have a much higher incidence of stroke. However, the mechanism is not completely understood. It may be the viscosity is a part of it, but in testing people here, they couldn't nail down an exact mechanism of what's going on. And this is still kind of an active area of research because these two were pretty recent papers, both of them this year. So what we're looking at is dehydration being a real risk factor for stroke. And that's a major problem. It's been a major problem in my family with a grandparent and with parents. So I know that it's something important that I need to look after and avoid is the dehydration. And it's easy to forget to drink your water sometimes. So I'm just telling you, I'm not perfect in this regard either. Water and exercise. A blinded study of bicycle performance of dehydrated male subjects looked at their performance. Exercise performance was tested in the same subjects, either hydrated or dehydrated. So the same people in a dehydrated status or in a hydrated status were tested on the bicycles for performance. These exercise bikes where you can see how well they can do. Dehydration was confirmed by plasma osmolality, and work completed was consistently lower in all subjects during a dehydrated state. In other words, they couldn't ride the bicycles as well, or as long, or as intensely if they were dehydrated. You can see how that effect was consistent all the way across the cycling time. So there was a very strong effect of I lost my place here, of hydration on exercise performance. Now, how do you know if you've got enough water? And that's one of the questions. I think the most scientifically stated, accepted methods to determine that is to measure blood urea nitrogen ratio to creatinine excretion. But that's not something that most people can do very easily. Another way you can do it is to measure the specific gravity of urine. And the specific gravity you can measure by taking the volume and weighing it. 1 gram of urine should be less than 1.02 grams. 1 cc of urine should be less than 1.02 grams. So the easiest way is just to calculate that. 100 milliliters should be less than 102 grams if you wanted to use that method. That's still a little bit awkward for most people to do. You probably don't have scales that accurate to use at home. But that's a pretty good method, actually, if you really want to do it. Color charts are less precise, more subject to error, but over time, and if you look at them, actually they're not too bad. A dark colored urine indicates it's too concentrated. which is often caused by dehydration, or usually. It can also be caused by riboflavin. If you take your multivitamin, the riboflavin goes into the urine and makes it darker colored yellow. And that's something you have to just be aware of. If you've taken, within a few hours, that'll happen with some of your riboflavin. It'll get in there and do that. Brown urine, like way over on 8, that can be something else. That can be blood in the urine. It can be caused by an infection or something like that. Or it could be really, really bad dehydration, perhaps. But, you know, you really want 1, 2, and 3 there is a nice area to be in for measuring or kind of assessing your hydration. And I wouldn't get too upset about being a little bit over that, you know, occasionally, because, you know, it's not a terribly precise method. This one isn't. And so look more for trends if you're going to do this. Also, a Bristol stool chart was developed by a university professor. And this was more about, he did it more for constipation and what your stool should look like to be normal. But if you're on the top there with hard, lumpy stools, you're probably not getting enough water and very likely enough fiber. Also, you could be lacking fiber down that type 5 down there, according to them. If you're getting 6 and 7 with the runny stools or diarrhea, it's usually not you're drinking too much water. What's usually happening there is that you've got something going on that's causing water to flush into the colon. That could be some nasty bacteria or something like that in there causing that. But or there are drugs that will cause that too and give you diarrhea. So you have to be kind of aware that there's some of the other things there. Most of the time, it's not that you're drinking too much water. Now, you can drink too much water, don't get me wrong. That is possible, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So how safe is water? Well, nothing is completely safe. I don't care what it is. You can get too much water too, and in fact, it's not uncommon to hear, every year or two about somebody drinking too much water and dying from it. The reason for that is your kidneys can only excrete water so fast, and usually this has been people trying to have contests to see who can drink the most water, something like that. There was one case where a female soldier in the United States died because the drill sergeant, she was in a basic training situation, was really pushing them to drink a lot of water because they were out running and stuff. And, you know, with all very good intentions, but they overdid it. What happens when you overdo it, you know, like I say, the kidneys have a limited capacity to get rid of water. And so it starts going into tissues more and more. And it causes the brain to get too much water. You have swelling in the brain, and then you can actually die from the swelling in the brain. And I think that's what happens in most of these cases of excessive water. You can also disturb electrolytes and lose them over time as well. So you can overdo water. But if you look at in this little chart here, relative safety of various things, where you have a lethal dose, and lethal dose 50 basically means a dose that if you give it to, if it's a person or an animal or whatever, 50% of them will die. Okay, that's what a lethal dose 50 is. For botulism, this is all in milligrams per kilogram. It's 0.00001 milligrams per kilogram. Very tiny amount. Botulism is really toxic. You could hold enough in your hands to kill everybody on Earth, essentially. It's that toxic. Aflatoxin is pretty toxic. You can see vitamin D, 10 milligrams, which is 1,000,000 IUs per kilogram body weight. In a way, it's toxic. In a way, it's still not that toxic. Nicotine, because you don't never see those kind of numbers for vitamin D. It's hard. You would have a hard time getting a hold of that much at one time. Caffeine, aspirin. You can take quite a bit of aspirin to reach an LD50. Citric acid, like 12,000 milligrams, 12 grams per kilogram. Body weight, and you think about 12 times 70 in a 70 kilogram person. That's a lot of citric acid to kill yourself. Water, 90,000 milligrams per kilogram. Way, way, way safer than any of the other things, even sugar or whatever. It's hard to kill yourself with water, but it is possible and has been done. Well, what are the causes of dehydration? We'll kind of run through that. And there's this is the journal article here, and I've got it on there. If you really want to learn about some of these ways you can become dehydrated, that's a pretty good article, actually. It has a lot of information. Most of them are listed on here, on that article, the dry heat, not, but obviously if you're out in hot sun without water, you're going to become dehydrated. Coffee and alcohol can dehydrate you. It depends a lot on how much caffeine you get, how strong the caffeine is. If it's a very low caffeine beverage, you won't get dehydrated. It won't have enough of a diuretic effect to overcome the amount of fluid you're getting. Same with alcohol. Turns out with alcohol, wine and whiskeys will dehydrate you. Beer apparently does not dehydrate you because the diuretic effect doesn't quite reach the level to get rid of as much fluid as you're getting with it. But there's other reasons to not use beer, but the dehydration appears not to be the one for that. Blood pressure drugs are really ones you have to worry about because they will dehydrate you. Now, they work on the renin-angiotensin system, which regulate water balance in your body and in your blood system, and they have a diuretic effect. So you have to be careful when you get those, and that's where you want to make sure you don't get overly dehydrated because it's really possible. Also, corticosteroids do that. Anything that will give you diarrhea, including the bottom one, dysbiosis, which is just bad bacteria in your gut. The drug metformin causes diarrhea sometimes and dehydration. And there's a whole host of them. If you really want to look at all of them, that paper there is open access. You can download it and read it on the internet very easily. Like I say, just go to pubmed.gov and you can download that paper and learn a lot more about it. Well, how much water do we need? Growing up, everybody said 8 glasses a day. That probably is not too bad, but it kind of assumes that an 8-year-old child needs the same as a grown man, for instance. Just 8 glasses a day for everybody. Well, body size does make a difference in how much water you need. And adjusting by body weight makes a lot of sense. If a person is overweight, you don't necessarily want to adjust it all the way up because fat doesn't utilize much water. It's hydrophobic. So you'd probably want to get closer to what your ideal body weight would be rather than what your actual body weight is if you're, have too much body fat. However, Dr. Reams, Carrie Reams, who somebody we have a lot of respect for and helped us with getting our business started, recommended that you drink 4 ounces of water every 30 minutes until you have the right amount for the day. That right amount would be half your body weight in ounces. And this way you're getting a small amount of water spread out during the day. The idea there is not to sort of flush your kidneys all at once and have to run to the bathroom and things like that, but just to keep your body, the water coming in and keep you hydrated, going out to your cells, keeping them hydrated. You actually get less efficiency out of the water if you drink a whole bunch at once, because it's going to get flushed out through the kidneys before it gets into the cells, and it won't work as well. It'll also make you go to the bathroom more. So you get a lot more hydration for the amount of water you drink by doing these small amounts spaced out during the day. And we happen to have a water bottle. We don't sell water, but we do sell water bottles if you want one. It's we actually have a new design. This is our older design on there, but we have a new design. It's calibrated to 4 ounces at a time if you want to do it just like Dr. Reams said. 32 ounces per bottle, and you can figure out on your own from your body weight and half of that in ounces how many bottles you need. For a lot of people, 2 bottles a day would work out about right. It kind of depends on you and your size. Well, that's all for today. I really enjoyed talking to you. I hope you learned something. I hope you'll put this to work because keeping your body hydrated is one of the most important things you can do to maintain good health. And it's something that really is pretty much free. You can pay for water if you want to, and actually I do myself. But staying hydrated is critical to your health, and it's something that you really will benefit a lot from if you do it. And thank you very much.